Global Crisis Radio, just going through the possibilities of international support for Syria. And again, this gets into this U.S.-Russian conflict that we're told that Rasmussen is telling the Russians, if you don't accept the ABM system, you don't get to go to Chicago, and that the ABM system is actually going to be partially operational as early as May 20th. So not so far in the future, they're actually going to have these anti-ballistic missiles, anti-missile missiles ready to go. So remember, the U.S. goal remains one thing: bomb Syria and start a civil war in Syria, and the bloodier, the better. Now, we've got the continued activities of the NATO death squads and the attempt of the death squads to stitch themselves together into a single terror force. In other words, to try to actually start to make the transition from death squads to a civil war. And we were promised, Hillary Clinton, around the 20th of November, promised us that there would be a civil war. And we've got now more people from the U.S., the State Department, right? They're always saying, oh, it's going to be a civil war. The civil war is coming soon. Now, surely there has been an escalation in the foreign fighters and death squad deployments. And you can see it's always remaining in these peripheral areas near the borders with the various neighboring countries. And again, we want to point to Iskenderun, Turkey, and the presence of the Libyan terrorist leader Belhaj, and how he's using 600 to 1,500 Libyan fighters, how he's got French and British Special Forces officers, he's got the CIA there, he's got the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command. They can't do enough to send killers into various places in Syria. The Emir of Doha maintains, the Emir of Kuwait, the Emir of Qatar, maintains his call for war. He wants the Arab League to make this possible. Now, remember, last week the Arab League split with the Saudis, the Qatars, the Kuwaitis, the Emiratis, the Omanis, 5 or 6 of the Gulf states. All the members of the so-called Gulf Cooperation Council said this mission of observers into Syria is a complete failure and we're leaving. But the others stayed, and that has been prolonged. But part of that same meeting was that the Arab League is now appealing to the United Nations Security Council, and the spotlight is once again on Russia. My recommendation is this for Russian diplomacy, the Foreign Minister Lavrov. Can you remember Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev coming to the United Nations, and when the proceedings went in a way that he didn't like, he was sitting there in, I think, the UN General Assembly. He took out his shoe, and he began slamming his shoe on the desk in front of him. Pow, pow, pow went the shoe. This is one of the times that shoes have been center stage in world history, right? Once when the shoe was thrown at Bush, more recently, but back in the late, around 1960, it was Khrushchev's shoe which terrified the imperialists. I say to the Russian Foreign Ministry, it's time to get out the shoes. Let's see the color of your shoes. Whether you have Gucci pumps or whatever you've got, it's time to get those out and slam them on the table and vote no. The world demands a Russian veto, and if you don't do it, your name is mud. You lose face. Nobody will ever trust you again until the end of time. So there it is. So far, hanging tough, but it's got to be prolonged. It's got to be sustained, right? You didn't win World War II with 2 or 3 months of good effort and then collapse. So don't allow that to happen this time. Concerning other things in the region, now Egypt. In Egypt, we have this Tantawi. He says that he's lifting the state of emergency. Says Tantawi, lifting the state of emergency, but he's got escape clauses. In other words, if you're a thug, there's still an emergency, right? If you're a thug, that doesn't apply to you. So consider yourself still under martial law if you're a thug. So this can be you can make anything out of this that you want. We're told, this is interesting now for our dear friends from Occupy Wall Street, Tahrir Square is now fragmented. It used to be that there would be one podium, one microphone, or whatever they have, and one speaker. They had an authoritarian format. But now, Tahrir is completely fragmented. So maybe they've learned something. Learn something about what it takes. I would urge the people of the Occupy Wall Street, take your General Assembly method, take your facilitators, take your consensus illusions, and junk them. Because if you don't, you're going to find that your groups will break up too. If you're going to have a plenary session, it's got to be done according to the normal majority rules. You can't allow it to be tied up by a minority. My God, what if the minority are police agents, as happened already in Spain? They had to lower the level of consensus that they needed. You've also got the story of U.S. interference is like this. We have the National Endowment for Democracy, and that's made up of a Democratic Party component and a Republican component. And the Republican component is the International Republican Institute. And the head of the branch in Cairo of the International Republican Institute is, lo and behold, a political nepotist. We've been following the various dynasties in American politics, right? Kennedy, Bush, Biden, Dodd, Paul is now one too, all nepotists. We've now got the son of Ray LaHood. Ray LaHood had been Republican congressman, presided over the impeachment of Clinton. Now he's the Secretary of Transportation. His son is the head of the Cairo branch of the International Republican Institute, and he's basically now been detained. He's more or less under house arrest by Tantawi and company. So, again, the goal of the U.S. vis-a-vis Syria right now, it seems to me, this is the front burner. Iran gets the rhetorical attention. Syria is the place they'd like to attack in the short run. A couple of other things about this. We're told by expert observers that there are several important deals that have been signed between Syria and Russia, as well as between Syria and China, and that this gives them another layer. If you saw the foreign minister of Syria, Moallem, in the past week, he basically says, we're here and we want to tell you that the Russians have put a red line around us. And I must say, we had a situation in the previous weeks where the U.S. government, Feltman, Hillary Clinton, all of them were saying, it's a red line for us, right? The letter that Obama had sent to Iran, it's a red line if you close the Straits of Hormuz. Within a couple of days, Lavrov came out and said, well, for us, the red line is don't attack Iran. And I'm glad that occurred. I had been, frankly, calling for that to happen. That's a pretty obvious thing. You can see a appearance I made on Press TV of Iran to that effect. Anyway, the goal of the U.S. remains the bombing of Syria and the unleashing of a civil war. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.